Spiritual Manthan.
Hey there, welcome to this deep dive into one of the most enduring and thought-provoking concepts of Christian theology, the 7 deadly sins. It's fascinating, isn't it, how a set of ideas developed centuries ago still resonates with us today. Maybe you're not religious, maybe you are. Either way, these sins are more than just religious teachings, they are reflections of the human condition. They highlight the flaws and struggles we face every day. In this video, we'll explore the 7 deadly sins, both as a Christian concept and in a broader context. What's so bad about these sins anyway? How do they affect our well-being, our relationships, and our place in society? And even if you're not Christian, can understanding these sins help you live a more meaningful, balanced life? Spoiler, they totally can. But before we dive into each sin, let's kick it off with the granddaddy of them all, pride, the so-called mother of all sins. Pride is a funny thing. It can disguise itself as confidence or self-assurance, but when it crosses a certain line, it becomes something much more dangerous. This kind of pride isn't about being proud of your achievements or taking joy in who you are. It's about feeling superior, thinking you're better than everyone else, sometimes even better than the universe or God itself. And that's where the danger lies. In Christian tradition, pride is considered the original sin, the one that caused Lucifer's fall from heaven. Think about that for a second. An archangel, one of the most exalted beings, was brought down by his own inflated sense of self-importance. Lucifer thought he could overthrow God, and that hubris led to his eternal downfall. It's a powerful metaphor for how pride can corrupt even the best of us. But pride doesn't just impact our spiritual well-being, it also isolates us from the people around us. When you think you're better than others, it's hard to form meaningful connections. You stop seeing people as equals, and instead you start judging them. You may not realize it, but this kind of mindset creates a barrier between you and the rest of the world. Relationships become strained, empathy fades, and you're left in a bubble of your own making. Humility is the key to counteracting pride. It's not about thinking less of yourself. It's about realizing that everyone has value. It's about acknowledging that you have flaws, just like everyone else, and that you're not above making mistakes. When you embrace humility, you open yourself up to growth, learning, and genuine human connection. Pride may be the mother of all sins, but humility is its antidote, and it's a powerful one. 2. Greed, the hungry beast. Greed is like a bottomless pit. No matter how much you throw into it, it's never full. Whether it's money, power, or material possessions, greed convinces you that what you have isn't enough. There's always something more, something better, something just out of reach that you have to get your hands on. And once you do, there's always another something waiting to take its place. It's exhausting, right? Greed isn't just about hoarding wealth. It's also about a mindset that puts having above being. We live in a world where success is often measured by what you own, how much you earn, or the power you hold. But the pursuit of these things can quickly become all-consuming. It's easy to lose sight of what truly matters: your relationships, your health, your well-being, when you're constantly chasing after the next big thing. Take a look at history, and you'll find countless examples of greed leading to downfall. Corporations that exploit workers for profit, political leaders who amass power at the expense of their people, or even everyday folks who put their careers above their families. Greed drives them to make decisions that, while lucrative in the short term, often lead to long-term consequences, both for themselves and the people around them. In Christian teachings, the antidote to greed is contentment. It's the ability to be satisfied with what you have, to find joy in the simple things, and to understand that material wealth is fleeting. Contentment doesn't mean you stop striving for success or growth. It means you're at peace with where you are, knowing that true happiness comes from within, not from external possessions. Generosity also plays a big role in fighting greed. When you give freely, whether it's your time, money, or energy. You realize that the greatest wealth isn't in what you accumulate, but in what you share. 3. Lust, the fire that consumes. Lust is one of those sins that everyone knows about, but few people really talk about. It's intense, it's fiery, and it can be downright dangerous if left unchecked. Lust goes beyond just sexual desire. It's about an overwhelming, all-consuming craving for physical pleasure, to the point where it becomes more important than anything else. It's the kind of desire that blinds you to the consequences, both for yourself and for others. At first glance, lust might not seem all that harmful. After all, desire is a natural part of being human, right? But when lust takes over, it changes the way you see the world and the people in it. Instead of forming deep, meaningful connections, lust reduces people to objects, to means for satisfying your own cravings. It's selfish, and it strips away the emotional and ethical dimensions of relationships. Unchecked lust can wreak havoc on your life. It can lead to broken relationships, betrayal, and a sense of emptiness. That momentary gratification fades quickly, and what's left is often guilt or shame. Over time, lust can become an addiction, something you keep chasing, even though it never truly satisfies you. And like any addiction, it can pull you away from the things that really matter: emotional intimacy, trust, and genuine love. The Christian antidote to lust is chastity, but don't confuse that with repression. Chastity isn't about denying your desires, it's about controlling them. It's about recognizing the value of self-control and understanding that true fulfillment doesn't come from fleeting physical pleasure, but from deep emotional and spiritual connection. Practicing chastity means respecting others and yourself, acknowledging that love is about much more than lust, and focusing on relationships that are built on mutual respect, trust, and care. 4. Envy, the green-eyed monster. Envy is one of those emotions that can sneak up on you when you least expect it. One minute, you're happy for someone else's success, and the next, you're feeling that familiar sting of jealousy. Why do they have what I don't? Why is their life better, easier, or more glamorous than mine? It's a tough feeling to shake, and if you let it, envy can turn into something much darker, a deep resentment that eats away at your happiness. At its core, envy is the inability to appreciate your own life because you're too focused on what others have. It's the constant comparison game where you're always coming up short. And let's be real, in the age of social media, it's easier than ever to fall into that trap. You scroll through Instagram or Facebook, seeing everyone's highlight reels, their vacations, promotions, happy families, and suddenly, your own life feels dull in comparison. But here's the thing, envy is a thief. It steals your joy, your peace of mind, and your ability to be content with what you have. It can also drive a wedge between you and others. Instead of celebrating their success, envy makes you bitter, turning potential friends into rivals. It pushes you to gossip, to undermine others, or even to sabotage their happiness, all because you can't stand the thought of them having something you want. The antidote to envy is gratitude. When you start focusing on what you do have, instead of what you lack, something magical happens. You begin to see the blessings in your own life, things that maybe you took for granted before. Gratitude shifts your perspective from scarcity to abundance. And love plays a role too. When you genuinely care for others, their success doesn't feel like a threat. It feels like something worth celebrating. By practicing gratitude and love, you can kick envy to the curb and start living a life that's focused on your own journey, not someone else's. 5. Gluttony, the overindulgent life. When you hear the word gluttony, your mind might immediately go to food, those big, indulgent meals that leave you feeling stuffed and uncomfortable. And yes, gluttony is definitely about overconsumption, but it's not just about food. Gluttony can apply to anything, binge-watching TV shows for hours on end, endlessly scrolling through social media, or even buying things you don't need just for the rush of it. It's about indulging to excess, to the point where it's no longer enjoyable but harmful. Gluttony often stems from a desire to fill some kind of void. Maybe you're stressed, sad, or bored, and instead of addressing those feelings, you turn to instant gratification food, entertainment, shopping, whatever. But the thing about gluttony is that it never truly satisfies. You might feel better for a moment, but that feeling doesn't last, and soon enough, you're back to overindulging again. It's a vicious cycle, one that leaves you feeling worse in the long run. Physically, gluttony can lead to health issues like obesity, heart disease, or addiction. But it's not just about the physical toll, it also affects your mental and emotional health. When you constantly overindulge, you lose touch with balance and moderation. You start to crave more and more, and it becomes harder to enjoy the simple things in life. The antidote to gluttony is temperance. It's about finding balance and practicing moderation in all aspects of life. Temperance doesn't mean you can't enjoy the things you love, it just means you enjoy them in a way that's healthy and sustainable. When you practice self-control, you learn to appreciate things more deeply, instead of constantly chasing after the next indulgence. Temperance helps you focus on what truly nourishes you, both physically and spiritually, and leads to a more fulfilling life overall. 6. Wrath, the rage within. Wrath, or uncontrolled anger, is one of the most destructive emotions we can experience. It's the kind of anger that blinds you to reason, pushes you to say things you don't mean, and leads you to actions you'll regret later. We've all been there. Something or someone pushes your buttons, and before you know it, you're lashing out, caught in the heat of the moment. But here's the thing about wrath. It doesn't just hurt the person you're angry at, it hurts you too. When you're consumed by wrath, it's like carrying a heavy weight around with you. That anger festers inside, turning into bitterness and resentment. It can cloud your judgment, leading you to make decisions that are more about revenge or punishment than resolution. And while it might feel satisfying in the moment, wrath leaves behind a trail of destruction, broken relationships, hurt feelings, and often a deep sense of regret. In Christian teaching, wrath is considered a dangerous sin because it goes against the values of love, forgiveness, and patience. It's an emotion that, if left unchecked, can spiral into violence, both physical and emotional. Whether it's through harsh words, passive-aggressive actions, or outright aggression, wrath pulls you further away from peace and closer to chaos. The antidote to wrath is forgiveness. It's about letting go of your anger and choosing to move forward rather than staying stuck in resentment. Forgiveness doesn't mean you have to forget what happened or excuse bad behavior. It just means you're choosing your own peace over revenge. Patience also plays a big role here. When you practice patience, you learn to manage your anger in a healthier way, responding to situations with a calm, measured approach instead of lashing out. By embracing forgiveness and patience, you break the cycle of wrath and open the door to healing, both for yourself and others. 7. Sloth, the silent saboteur. Sloth often gets misunderstood as simple laziness, but it's deeper than that. Sloth is a kind of spiritual and emotional inertia, a refusal to engage with the world or your own potential. It's that feeling of just drifting through life without motivation, without purpose, and without the drive to make the most of your time. You might find yourself procrastinating on important tasks, avoiding challenges, or simply going through the motions without any real enthusiasm. Sloth is dangerous because it's subtle. It doesn't explode into your life like wrath or lust. Instead, it creeps in quietly. One day, you're putting off a project because you're tired, and before you know it, you're stuck in a pattern of avoidance. You stop setting goals, stop pushing yourself to grow, and eventually, you start feeling disconnected from your own potential. But sloth doesn't just affect your productivity, it affects your sense of purpose. When you're not living up to your abilities, it creates a sense of emptiness. You start to feel unfulfilled, like you're just floating through life without direction. Over time, this lack of engagement can lead to depression, anxiety, and a deep sense of regret over wasted opportunities. The antidote to sloth is diligence. It's about committing to your responsibilities, your goals, and your purpose, even when it's hard. Diligence requires perseverance, the willingness to keep going even when things get tough. It's not about working yourself to the bone, it's about finding meaning in the effort. When you practice diligence, you start to see the fruits of your labor, and that sense of accomplishment fuels your motivation. By embracing diligence, you shake off the stagnation of sloth and step into a life of purpose, growth, and fulfillment. So there you have it, the 7 deadly sins and the virtues that can help us overcome them. Whether you're religious or not, these sins represent real struggles we all face. They're reminders that living a balanced, meaningful life requires effort, self-awareness, and a willingness to grow. If you're still with me, let me know in the comments, which of these sins do you struggle with the most, and which have you conquered? I'd love to hear your thoughts. As always, thank you for watching, and I hope this video gave you something to think about.